How's it going, everybody? Alright, we're going to do a little bit of a market update here. This market update's not going to be as in-depth as I would like it to be. At the time of this recording, I have to go pick up my daughter. My wife isn't feeling good. A couple of my children aren't feeling good, so I have to pick up my daughter from school. So this one won't be as in-depth, but still, I wanted to go in a little bit of detail here because we haven't done one in a couple weeks. And I can do another one tomorrow anyway, and we'll go a little bit deeper. So, long story short, talk about some of the things we were able to kind of theorize a little bit. Obviously, we know what happened with this big move. You know, if you go back a few weeks, we talked about getting back, whether it was in this area. We talked about it many times. In fact, you know what? We talked about it over here, right? Back in this time, I remember going over a possibility of saying, hey, we're going to go down like this. I don't think I went down that deep. I think I said like 3,600. This is going back months, right? You guys might remember. And eventually come back, obviously time, don't look at the time scale, but come back to test this area before working your way sort of back down again. How far, who knows, right? Those are the things to be determined. So we talked about this, and it's what happened. The one element that caught me off guard personally is that I did think that a lot of that would happen like more of a snapback. If not here, then, as I mentioned, off that 3,600 range. And what ended up happening is that that bear was so brutal, and there were so many sellers. You ended up in a situation where it fought back here on this day, got buried again. You could see this was a fighting day, got buried again, fought for multiple days, and just brutal. I mean, this was a brutal sell-off, obviously. Don't have to tell you that, you guys are aware of this, but it was very interesting because what that then caused is this very long, extended, and we spoke about this too. I said we're going to have to do a journey through the desert, right? A secondary bear market, and that's what happened. We had this basic ceiling. I would actually put it here because this was another breakdown. And we can go back here, of course, because that is where the resistance was, but this all comes from then anatomy of a trade, right? Which is one of the very first lessons, looking at how markets are set up, right? Just going here and looking there, and we can just mark some spots off on a chart and look at our tops and previous resistance points like this, and basically kind of figure things out. So very simple stuff here. What happens? You break out from one level, boom, right to the next. It's not coincidental. So we were able, even more recently, I know I just talked to you about something from several months ago, but then more recently, on one of our recent market updates, I think it was right after this, if I'm incorrect, I apologize, but it was at this time, and I said, you know what, a lot of times with these things, we can look at it a couple different ways, and this is in one of these, hey, I was right videos. Right doesn't matter in trading. It's, can we make money, right? So the point is what we want to do, and what you guys want to learn to do if you're not doing it already, is just see possibilities, right? Reasonable possibilities, but see what those possibilities and probabilities are so that you can have a game plan. And we talked about that right there, and I said, if not, sometimes we can go right through this guy like this, because you can lose a level, regain it. Big candle theory, that big candle allows you to regain those levels. So when you see that, it's like, all right, got lost, it resisted, shot back through. So how it happened, who knows? We'll use this line for now. That's our top. Some sort of ascending triangle. So we were able to theorize that in our videos that we do together, which is these market update videos. And whether you drew it that way or this way, or if you didn't want to do that at all, you just started to see a trend from here, which is fine also. Do a little geometry of a trend line like that. Ultimately, what ended up started to happen is you started to get yourself into a position where, yes, on a daily scale, things were cranking along just fine. You get up here, at a secondary line, how we could see it. Let me bring this guy down. That was our resistance, right? And what happens is once you got back into this area, we see that it was resisted heavy, resisted heavy, resisted heavy. So every time it got up in here, it was resisted heavy, right? Same thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Now this time, it did resist, not as heavy. This was the first one that was decent, but it was a weekend. I remember this very specifically. I don't trust things that happen on a weekend. this was a weekend, and then you got the weekend dump also. So the next day you then got that very, very heavy fall, and I got this kind of put in wrong. It should be something. I like it here. It's fine. Regardless, the point is another heavy rejection. So there was a one day, which I believe was a weekend, but regardless, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 6 out of the 7 times that you entered this area after the fall, after the local bottom, it was a significant rejection. And then what do we see here? It pops into this zone. Indecision. Okay, so you had a little indecision. Then you had the tight doji right there. It's a very tight doji right there. And then once this guy started to go north, it was impressive. Even me watching, you know, I was looking for reasons to sell, looking for reasons to get out, because I didn't want to get caught in one of these for sure. But they weren't really appearing. This, you know, they call this a sign of strength, right? So basically, we were just hammering away, and then basically shorts piled up. I'll show that tomorrow's video, maybe, if I remember. If you guys want to see it, remind me, and I'll make sure to put that in there of how that transpired. But there was a bunch of shorts that piled up while this was rising, and then someone pushed a button on these guys, and boom, you know, that's what happened. So that's where we're at now. You know, it's very difficult. This is another sign of strength type of pattern, and then another burst up again, and finally you get this dark mole type candle where you basically big rejection, but the buyers immediately snap it back up as well. And here we are in the situation of, hey, where are we headed? Well, we're right back into one of these zones, and this is a rejection territory until it's not, right? So really there's a few layers of this to get over. It's not just what I painted here. Technically we could do something like this if we want to be reasonable, right? And you gotta get, it's either gonna jump up and get in, start hammering away up here. First of all, it's either gonna be rejected, right? Or we're gonna get up here and then start hammering away at this zone to see if we can push a little bit higher to our previous floor, which, you know, I would assume is gonna act as some sort of ceiling. We never know for sure. You know, this thing has been extremely strong, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the idea is now we pushed on through. I don't think I have. You guys are familiar with this. This is VPVR. This is basically showing volume in a specific area. I'll put another daily chart because this shows historical volume at these levels. And one thing you will notice is at these particular levels, I'll zoom in a little. I don't need the blower stuff. Okay, so historically, in this level where we had this recent consolidation, heavy volume, right? And a lot of that was right here during these several months. Historically, obviously, at this 6,000 level, lots of volume, which was surely put in over this time span. But you can see here this gap of volume, right? So without even speculating too much, I would assume that regardless of what happens in the very near-term future or what's going to happen over a few months, I would definitely expect some sort of pattern to have some sort of trading action in here to start to fill up these volume gaps so that we have better history, which by the way is a very good sign. If we can live in here, this is a positive for bulls, which I'm assuming everyone would prefer to be a bull if possible. So that would be a positive. You would love to see the volume profile, which is what this is called. This is basically just like you normally see the volume, but at specific prices, to see these levels filling in. So the more the better. If that means going back down now to a level like this 4,200, well, technically this 4,200, as I mentioned, I'm not going to give you the full TA here because I'm a little bit constrained on time. So I'm not going to get into the specifics of the moving averages. We'll do that tomorrow. But just talking from a technical standpoint. Now this was a ceiling, as we know, for a while, and now should become, it's obviously a significant support resistance flip. So this should be a support. So even if we end up losing this area, I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen in the next week. I'll tell you we can theorize that, hey, we could extend right further into these areas, build some significant bear divergence, right, and in doing so get rejected pretty heavily, right? And you know, will we stay up here for a little while? Will we head back in there? Maybe this doesn't extend. Maybe it stays right here in some sort of double topping type formation we have right there. But I would expect some more time. I will throw on one thing real quick. As I mentioned, we're not going to do moving averages and whatnot unless I change my mind. But let's get rid of MACD. We don't need you right now. I don't need any of this right now. Well, first of all, definitely keep an eye out for obviously any type of bearish divergence, but on this scale, on a daily scale, you're just not seeing it, right? While I have the MACD, I will go ahead and keep it on for a moment. Let's not worry about longs and shorts just yet. I'll possibly go over that tomorrow. Okay, so here we are. Get rid of this volume profile because that can be annoying. There we go. And I'll also get rid of some of the drawings. Just time for them. Alright, so keep an eye out on the MACD, right? Let's find out. Is some divergence going to step in there? Is some divergence going to step in on 12-hour scale? And maybe not just the MACD, but maybe also like RSI, obviously, stochastics, whatever you use. But ultimately, we would like to find some. Now, there's some certainly appearing, right, already. Now, the RSI is pretty good at this kind of stuff. But I'm going to show you why it's a little bit tricky. It's not as easy as just locating divergence because something happened here, right? The force of this thing is incredible. I mean, it really is incredible. We extended. This one had tremendous force right here. This had a tremendous force. And this one pales in comparison to what happened here. Because even if you go to a daily scale, when you're seeing an RSI climb on a daily scale up to a level that is basically at 90, and that is unbelievable. I'm going to give you some examples of how unbelievable it is because it is relevant to the topic of how bullish can we be. Because the reality is, I would fully expect normally, I'm actually going to get rid of this for now, guys, if you don't mind. Let me draw that another time. And my horizontal line, I'm going to match it, okay? So this is on a daily scale. We're going to go back in history. Bitstamp's pretty good at that. And we're going to look at a few things that are very, very interesting, okay? First of all, as far as the force level is concerned, let's look at the previous bear. Alright. This level's interesting. I mean, this would be a scary thought because we're obviously beyond that on force right now. By the way, the point that I'm making is that normally when you see this force, it's in the beginning stages of a bull run, right? You see this? See this? Or the very end, right? And what you don't see, even this one, this is the very beginning stage of the bull run. Let me show you a little bit closer real quick. This was after the long bear bottom. No one knew it was a bottom, but journey through the desert, right? Long accumulation pattern, sideways pattern. Then boom, the force that we have right now is equivalent to this. Now, one other thing that's very interesting is usually when you see this, you're going to usually catch a divergence on that scale. Okay, look, the divergence is here. I do want to point this out because my primary would be to expect this, right? Let's expect bear divergence on a daily scale. That doesn't mean it can't sink down. This thing pulled back for a couple days and then it jumped up, right? So I would expect something like that. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. But if my primary assumption would be something along those lines where you get another push higher based off bear divergence on a daily scale. Now maybe it doesn't occur. Maybe the bear divergence only comes in on a 4-hour, 12-hour, something like that. But this would be my thought process. But still, sticking to my idea is that when we've seen force like this, what was this? This was the beginning of the bull market, right? Now, we had a tremendous pullback. Tremendous pullback. This thing pulled back from 503 to 290s in that range. I don't know the exact number, but that feels like a bear market, guys. That's going to feel nasty, right? That would feel like, oh, wow, we're going back to 3,000. We're going to test the lows. Might go lower. When you're in the midst of something like that, that would feel terrible. So we can absolutely have a very, very deep retracement and still be in the starts of the bull market, right? So that's something to keep in mind. But also, and this here, now this ends up being, again, just a tremendously bullish pattern right there. That's, again, another ascending triangle, sign of strength at the very end of this bear market, and then it's over again. But you know what's very interesting? What happens again? Another spring, right? And then another deep retracement from that. We went from 440s to 780 300 some point gain, back down to almost 440s again, almost tested that exact spot. But what you notice is that these levels, when they're broken through, they become like floors. You see that? So this is something similar to the pattern we just broke. But if it does come back, which would be around 4,000, 4,200 now, you would think that that should hold. Right? That's the primary view. Now, does it have to? No, of course not. Because what can happen is maybe for some reason we have an extensive force. Here's a scary situation, okay? This one, a lot of people say, oh, higher high means it's the end of the bear market. Well, tell me this wasn't a higher high. Absolutely. Look at that. Higher high. Look at the force. Now, the force wasn't to this red line, which is where we're at now, but it was extensive, right, in the 80s. This is what has me thinking, like, wow, maybe we're going to start to see the end of this bear here, because we did reach 90, right? But here, it went up to 83-ish in that range, and then what happened? That was just the kickoff of another humongous bear leg. So I can't discount that either, right? We have to be prepared for it to say, hey, maybe that is something that we have to prepare for and realize that, hey, it's a possibility that in that situation, you're talking about retesting lows, maybe seeing $1,000 Bitcoin, right? Of course, again, that's not my primary right now, but we cannot discount it. If we discount it, we're going to get broad, we're going to get in a bad situation and basically get ourselves into a position where we have way too much hope, because ultimately, I can't think of a better bear setup than to get everyone FOMOing in right now. Obviously, this isn't now, but this is a similar look to where everyone's happy and then just sell and dump on them if that's what someone wanted to do. If someone has a real reason to dump 100,000, hundreds of thousands of coins, and that would be the way to get it to happen. But it's not my thought process. Again, I'm just pointing out a couple different options on both ends of the spectrum so that you guys can see that, hey, there are some scenarios. Now, it would be unique because, again, we've never reached this situation where we went that high. So following up on that thought, just to show you the force again, this matches the same force. What happens? Deep pullback, almost a retest. You get the. This is nice because not only did you get the, and this happens a lot too in these situations, you end up getting first a bear divergence on that scale, right, the daily scale, and then after a deep test, it still gave you another bear divergence on a higher, longer scale, going from October, November to mid-December in that range. This was another divergent situation here. Obviously, it's extended. It's a little bit longer than I like to use, but divergence is divergence, right? So from that standpoint, it would help you to see some weakness in this as well, and it took some time, obviously, to work its way through. Anyway, that's that. If we continue on forward, what do we see? Now, the other thing you might notice, though, is that, yes, when it gets to this level, we're seeing that it's usually the start of some sort of bull action or bull market. But also notice that when it gets to these levels, it's falling back just about every time pretty quickly, right? You might get another week, 10 days, 14 days of some bullishness, but then some sharp sell-off is coming. So we got to prepare for that as well and know that, hey, we don't want to just go to sleep on these things thinking nothing's going to happen. At some point, there's a sharp pullback in our future, right? It's going to be hard to avoid that because you can't maintain at these levels. Now, here's another example. It got up to that level. Here it put in the divergence and then went even a little bit higher and ended up double topping, right? You got a double topping on RSI, so bear divergence right there, and of course sharp sell-off, but regardless, we're in a bull market, right? Here's another one. You end up seeing the force get to that level. This one doesn't give you the immediate bear divergence. Just pulls back a little bit and then goes again to a higher level. This one also doesn't give you the bear divergence, just falls off. So you don't have to get that bear divergence immediately. What you can see is it does give it to us, but it took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 days, 13 days technically to appear. And then you could have said, oh, okay, bear divergence. So it might not be an immediate situation. We just have to be a little bit on guard of these things. And that's my ideal situation, would be to get a higher scale bear divergence in the form of a daily. Okay, so do I see any more of those that reflect what we've seen here? I like this one, right, because it shows, hey, maybe we can even go higher. But the thing that we're talking about is this one ended the bear for the most part. Excuse me, ended the bull from this divergence to that one. But you never see it at the start. Excuse me, you never see it within a bear market unless it's starting a bull trend, right? So that's a positive. Now, does that mean that 100% that means we're going bullish? Of course not. We have to write a new rule and say, okay, well, nothing works all the time. So that can be a reality. But to me, I can't discount the fact that the force is tremendous. It is a tremendous amount of force, going to 90 on an RSI. Yes, I expect a full recycle, but that's what creates, what I call a positive reversal, what you would see, as a higher time frame hidden divergence, getting the weekly scale in your favor. Now, the weekly doesn't look anywhere near as beneficial. In fact, the weekly, go to a monthly scale, there's elements of it that are outright bearish. We can talk about that tomorrow when I look at the moving averages. I just literally have to walk out of here and pick up my daughter. But basically, let's just see. Something like things like on balance volume, unbelievably bullish. When you look at a weekly scale, though, even this is nice and nice and bullish. At higher levels than literally here. Now that has there's a bearish undertone to that, right? Technically, this is going to set off an element of bearish divergence because you're going to pivot, right, in an area where you're at a higher RSI and a lower price. But ultimately, what that's going to mean, no matter how deep this retracement, if we do hold, let's say this 4,000 area like that, it's also then going to create a pivot, right, of some sort. Doesn't mean we're going off to the races. We could spend a lot of time just living in this area, between 4,000 and 6,000, but you're going to create a weekly pivot at some point as well that now reverses that trend with the RSI, where now you'll be at a lower RSI than a previous area in here, but a higher price than a previous area in here, and that becomes a bullish trend, because ultimately RSI is an oscillator, right? So as you see, what's happening here, it's staying in the same range, but price is climbing, right? So you want to see that, and the way that starts is by the cycle reversing, right? Reversing, it leaps up, it reverses, right? Even here, leaps up a little bit. This is more like a head and shoulders type, but it gets up there a little bit, inverted head and shoulders on this one, gets up, comes back, see the pivot? That's the bull pivot right here on RSI, and then that starts a new trend. Now, it could live in here for a while, then go back up here. But ultimately, the idea is that's what you want to see here is like, all right, so eventually, yes, it could take weeks and months to do so, but it's the next bull pivot that's going to be significant on a weekly scale. All right, unfortunately, I have to run. As I mentioned, I just wanted to make sure I got you at least something out this evening. Happy to go further in depth. If you have questions that you want me to roll through as far as what this mean, what's that mean, anything along those lines as it relates to a market update for tomorrow, shoot those on Discord so I can go over them as well, and I'll try to address them. I don't mind doing a nice detailed long market update, especially considering the circumstances. So this is Mr. Anderson signing out. I will talk to you tomorrow.